I might look tired. I woke up dreaming that I had a horse and a wolf, and there was some monster in the woods, and we had to get right out of there. So, woke up a little bit earlier than usually, but it is a good morning. And we're going to try to hit the 5-minute mark today. That's our challenge for today. We might not hit it, but we've got a 5-minute video idea, which is this concept that the hero doesn't create his own quest. And we're going to take this word hero and we're going to kind of conflate it with the word warrior. Then we ask, who creates the quest? And that would be the priest, the myth maker. He creates the quest. So Marduk, he doesn't come up with the plan to kill Tiamat. He accepts the quest. The gods, generally the pantheon, creates the quest. They are the myth makers. They are the narrative makers. They say, Marduk, won't you please go kill Tiamat? Marduk says, sure, I'll do it. He is the warrior hero. He goes out, he slays Tiamat. But he doesn't create the quest. He doesn't create the myth. He merely accepts it. So there is this duality between the priest and warrior. Now, when we look at a guy like Martin Luther, he's not just a priest. He's not just an intellectual. He's not just a traditionalist. He is not just looking at biblical tradition. He's not just looking at Christology. He's not just observing. He's not just carrying on the tradition. He's not just talking about things. He's not just making myths, but he's also an activist. He's also someone who wants to change the world. He's also he's a fighter against the church. And so Martin Luther is correctly seen as big. He is gross. He is large. He has this carnality about him, whereas other depictions of holy men, of priests, they're supposed to be skinny or emaciated or modest or whatever. And he kind of has this slight smile on his face in certain depictions, and he's kind of gregarious, and he's kind of large, and he has a wife, right? So Martin Luther is combining this role of the warrior and the priest. We could say that biblically Melchizedek maybe combines this role. But Martin Luther does it in an interesting way where he says, we're not just going to accept the tradition. We're not just going to be bookworms. But we're also not just going to be purely of the warrior type where you accept the quest. See, the church was making up the quest. The church was saying, we must save Jerusalem, or we must save Christendom in Spain, or we have to save Christendom. We have to defeat the pagans. So the priests of that society were the myth makers. They were the quest makers. They were making up the quest for the warriors to go fight, for the heroes to go fight. And you could say even, Norse sagas contain something like this, where there's a differentiation between those who make up the myth and those who actually carry out the myth. Odin is an ambiguous figure in this regard for me because he, in a way, he's the master of the runes. He doesn't create them, he receives them. But then he's also the god of war. So there's a bit of ambiguity there, kind of a warrior priest type in Odin. Whereas Thor is more of a pure warrior type. And besides those two, we wanted to get into, I guess, to blow past Luther for a moment. I wanted to get to Nietzsche because Nietzsche has this idea that the warrior should not accept tradition. He's like Martin Luther. He says, don't accept the tradition of the Catholic Church. Make up your own tradition. Interpret the Bible your way. And Nietzsche says we shouldn't accept myths from other people because myths is how we're controlled. He says the power of the Jews is that they were able to come up with this myth called Christianity, which controls Europe. And he's not anti-Semitic. He praises the Jews for this. So he says the Jews are a great people because they are myth makers. But they are not just myth makers, but they are also agents in their own regard. They are also competitive and they lust after power, which for Nietzsche is a good thing. So for Nietzsche, the optimal man, the Übermensch, is not the hero who dutifully accepts tradition or the hero who dutifully accepts what he's told, the conservative, the cuckservative, the Marduk who just accepts the quest, the Catholic who just accepts the tradition. Nietzsche rejects this. He says, no, we shouldn't be like that because that's a kind of slavery. If we just accept Christianity and do what it tells us to do, we're cucks. That's slave morality. We're enslaved. We have to liberate ourselves. We have to have our own morality. We have to create our own values. We have to create our own myths, and then we have to carry them out. So this is a rebellion against the Babylonian dichotomy between Marduk as the quest taker and the other gods as the quest makers. Nietzsche is saying we have to transcend this dichotomy, and the warrior has to become a myth maker in his own right. He has to become the autocratic final authority on his own mythology, and that to accept Christianity as a mythology is to enslave yourself. And so really what Nietzsche is talking about, he's talking about a combination of the priest class with the warrior class, saying that not only are you going to carry out the quest, but you're going to make up the quest. You're not going to receive the quest from the church or from the state or something like this, because that would mean you're enslaved. And that would mean you're low, you're like a peasant if you accept a quest, if you accept morality, if you accept a narrative, if you accept tradition. Nietzsche says, no, you have to make up your own quest, make up your own values, decide for yourself. Which I was just reading, now that we've had this hype about the Joker, I was reading a good old analysis of Heath Ledger's Joker as a Nietzschean figure. And this article was praising him as a Nietzschean figure, praising him as a Heideggerian figure. And Heidegger was, or the analysis of Heidegger was saying that there is, I'm trying to remember here, I'm going to pull up the article. I think the German term was Gestell, so Joker, Nietzsche. Let's see how quickly I can pick this up. So let's see when Heidegger is mentioned, because I don't read Heidegger, I just read about Heidegger. Joker is in revolt against the morals of morality and its metaphysics, the reigning interpretation of being, that the world is ultimately transparent to reason and susceptible to planning and control, which is a Babylonian idea of Marduk slaying Tiamat in John David Ebert's analysis. Heidegger called this interpretation of being the Gestell, a term which connotes classification and arrangement to maximize availability, like a book in a well-ordered library, numbered and shelved so it can be located and retrieved. For modern man, to be is susceptible to being classified, labeled, shelved, available. So kind of a nominalism, maybe, as Ivan the Heathen would say. Heidegger regarded such a world as a hell. The Joker agrees. So for the Joker to be outside of classification is to be free, to escape the A, B, C of classification, which in the Greek system, we would say to classify is to be within peras. To be unclassifiable is to be within aperon. To be unclassifiable, to be unlimited. So if this is what Heidegger is truly advocating, and I don't know if I agree with this interpretation of Heidegger, but if this is true, then Heidegger is extremely anti-Greek in my analysis as far as the Pythagorean tradition goes. For Heidegger, the way to freedom is to meditate on Gestell, which he claims is mysterious. How did people start thinking this way? Again, I would say Babylonian myth. Was the idea cooked up by a few individuals? Heidegger thinks not. He says it cannot be traced back to individual thoughts and actions, but instead to conditions. Its origins are inscrutable. The Gestell is an Ereignis, an event, a contingency. How do we break free from this? Then I guess we have to go Joker mode. All of that, yeah, is, we don't really have time to fully unravel all of that and critique it. But this is what Nietzsche is advocating. This is kind of what Luther's advocating in rebellion against Marduk and a rebellion against Pythagoras. And it leads to the arrival of a merchant class, which envisages itself as a warrior class in its competition, the cutthroat ruthlessness of finance, but also a priest class in that you're always manufacturing value. No value is real. It's always manufactured. So that's all for now. We made it under 10 minutes, which is good. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.